Thomas is a little blue tank engine on an island called Soda, featuring 6 wheels, small funnel and dome, a whistle, and his special number 1 to represent the first Northwestern Railway engine. Thomas is over a century old and is running his branch line with his beloved faithful coaches, Annie and Clarabelle. On some occasions, he would see the Fat Controller, who would like to go by Sir Topham Hatt on the station platform when he stops. Sir Topham Hatt would most commonly phrase,
"Well done, Thomas. You are a really useful engine."
or
"Right on, Tom."
this makes Thomas very happy and pleased with himself. Not only does Thomas pull his coaches, but sometimes he would pull freight wagons which would go by as trucks. For example, taking them to Brendan docks to get them loaded and unloaded. But on very rare occasions, he can do both. One day, Thomas came by the Knapford shunting yards. There were trucks to be taken to Brendan and Vickerstown.
If I take those trucks to their destinations and pull my coaches,
He thought.
then I'll do twice the work and be more useful.
Thomas asked the workman for consent from Sir Topham Hatt.
"Fine by me."
Sir Topham Hatt consented.
You're allowed to take those trucks.
The workman responded. And so Thomas was coupled to the train and was on his way. Thomas was on his branch line for a little bit to drop off and pick up some passengers at Torrent. Then he went back onto the main line at Elsbridge. He hooked up at Edward's branch line for more passengers and dropped off the first train to the docks. Once he'd done so, he went back onto the main line, and up ahead was Gordon's Hill. The hill was steep and the train made it a little difficult. Eventually he managed to make it through the hill. He finally made it to Vickerstown to drop off the latter train. As Thomas was rearranging himself for the journey back, a man stumbled across him.
Excuse me, are you a passenger train? If so, could you take me home to Knapford, please? I missed my train going back.
I'll gladly accept it.
Thomas agreed.
We'll have you back there in no time.
Thomas rushed like any other mainline engine to Knapford. His coaches complained a little for going too fast, but they don't mind sometimes. Thomas dropped off the passenger and went to Tidmouth Sheds for a good night's sleep. Sir Topham Hatt and the passenger who Thomas dropped off at Knapford today were there to see him.
Thank you for taking me home, Thomas.
Greeted the passenger.
"Thank you for your hard work, Thomas.
Praised Sir Topham Hatt.
As a reward, you will have a day off."
You're very welcome, and thanks.
Responded Thomas, and Thomas went to sleep.
Today was a special night called Soda Movie Night, where they watch movies on a giant screen like a movie theater. But before it could get ready, they have to do the preparations. Where could we set up the movie theater? Pondered Sir Topham Hatt that morning. We can set it up here at the sheds, Percy debated. We cannot do it here at the sheds. The screen's not big enough, and we can only fit in so many engines here, Gordon said. Then an idea struck Thomas. If we do it at a shunting yard, then we can add more engines and set it up like a drive-in theatre. Thomas gave the idea to Sir Topham Hatt. That's a brilliant idea. We will start the preparations right now. Stephanie has the special job, which will be revealed later in the episode. James and Toby brought the passengers. Gordon brought the special visitors in the special red coach, and Percy, Henry, and Thomas told as many engines to go to the Vita tonight. As the sun set, engines and people gathered around the shunting yard for the Vita to start. The main steam team and Stepney gathered the front row as they are the chief engines. At last Stepney arrived. "Hello, Stepney, I saved a spot for you," whispered Thomas. As the special cargo was revealed, it was a box van with lens on the back. "Hello," the box van greeted. Everyone was surprised to see something unusual like that. "What are you supposed to be?" questioned Sir Topham Hatt. "I'm a movie van. You know I play movies in slideshows. I have a projector inside, so I have those lenses at the back to fit the screen." "Fair enough. And what's your name?" "Call me Anthony." "Hello, Anthony," the front row greeted. "You're needed for the chuff and Vita we just built," said Stepney. "Place the film reels inside me and get me started," Anthony insisted. The worker pulled some film reels and put into the projector inside Anthony. "I'll handle the rest from here," Anthony relented. After a while, a video started to play. It was about Gordon, the big express engine himself. "What am I doing here?" Gordon gasped questionably. The screen showed him pulling the express on the island. After it was shown, Anthony pulled out more footage from his projector. One was when Thomas racing with Bertie, and one when Thomas got covered in pudding. Everyone laughed at the latter. Thomas, secretly embarrassed, gave a chuckle. More movies were shown about other engines, some emotional, some funny, some really useful. There were others that focused on something else. Then, Anthony grew tired, thus making the movie night end. Everyone left to go to sleep, except the front row, which they introduced themselves to Anthony. "It's a pleasure to have you here. You are very portable. When will you play us more in the future?" "Sometime soon, if I'm convenient enough. Thanks for making my visit special." "Praise Stepney. That was the most wonderful night I have ever had since a long time ago." Now, Anthony would show movies and slideshows when it's a nice warm and dry night. I wonder if he would like to play anything if he'd come visit. Don't you? Thomas the Tank Engine was having a splendid day. He was having a good time and was right on time at each station. Just like clockwork, Thomas's driver would say. This made Thomas feel very pleased with himself, but he knew that he would not run nearly so well if not for his driver, who Thomas had worked with for years and loved very much. After the day's work was over, Thomas and his driver loved stopping near an old oak tree near the windmill. It was a peaceful spot. Each evening, as his driver sat on the fence, looking out over the pasture, Thomas could see that his driver was getting old. He wasn't as young or spry as he used to be many years ago. Soon, he would have to retire, which made Thomas feel very sad. "Don't worry, Thomas," his driver said. "We'll always be good friends, no matter what happens." The next morning, Thomas was astonished to find a different driver greeting him in the sheds. "I beg your pardon," Thomas said, "but where's my driver?" "I'm your driver today, Thomas. We've got an early train. Be quick now." Thomas's journey didn't go nearly as smoothly as it had before. The driver didn't have the same fineness with the regulator as Thomas's driver had. But Thomas was far less worried about the ease of the journey. He was concerned for his driver. Has he retired after all, without saying goodbye? Thomas thought to himself sadly. The following morning, and the morning after that, Thomas still didn't see his driver, and he was so busy that he didn't get a chance to find out what had happened. He was beginning to become very frustrated. Finally, one afternoon, the new driver tried to move Thomas across the yard to begin shunting, but Thomas didn't want to. Show a wheel, Thomas. Sir Toughen Hat is counting on us. I'm not moving until you tell me where my driver is, Thomas spluttered. The driver looked nervous. Are you certain you wish to know? The driver said. Yes, please tell me, Thomas asked, with feeling. Your driver has gotten a virus. Thomas's eyes widened. Like Bill and Ben's coes and sneezels. No, Thomas, it's worse. Much, much worse. The driver explained everything. Thomas couldn't believe what he was hearing. One word stood out apart from the rest. Terminal. Later that evening, Thomas returned to his shed, feeling depressed. His driver was gravely ill and there was no way to help. The other engines didn't know what to say or how to make Thomas feel better. The rest of the week, he was too distracted to attend his work. He shunted the wrong trucks and stopped beyond the platform. Then, while at Knapford Station, his new driver was called into Sir Toughen Hat's office. He and Sir Toughen Hat walked back out and approached Thomas slowly. Sir Toughen Hat started. I don't know how to tell you this, Thomas, but it is best that you know. He and the new driver traded nervous glances. We received a message that your driver passed away around 8 this morning. Thomas's heart deeply sank. Tears formed in his very eyes. The sun was beating down, but Thomas felt ice cold. Then he remembered what his driver had said about being friends no matter what, and amidst his tears had a thought. Sir, Thomas said meekly, can I honor my driver in some way, but I don't know what that might be. Sir Toughen Hat smiled. He thought you might ask that. What do you mean? Your driver had a very specific list of requests for his funeral. He wanted you to pull a special train to carry him to his final resting place. And where might that be? A place you know very well. The old oak tree, Thomas said, smiling. It was only fitting for Thomas's coaches and he and Clarabel to be used for the special train. Some of the seats were removed to make way for the casket. Together, Thomas, his coaches, his driver and family made their way to the old oak tree, where Thomas was able to say goodbye. I will miss you, he sighed, and though he felt sad, he also felt happy, because he knew that even though his driver was no longer here, whenever Thomas visited the old oak tree, his friend would still be there to share it with him.
The Famous Seven, better known as the Thomas Team, are a group of engines that are most notable on the island of Sodor. They are distinguished by their unique colors: red, green, yellow, orange, and blue. However, none of the engines supported a purple color. Thomas and his friends were talking about that all morning. Do you know what's missing in our group? What? I don't know. I couldn't put my buffer on it. Is it about the color purple? Yes, that's what. But who could be purple? Aha! Maybe Toby could be purple. Purple? Purple is high status, royalty. But what about Ryan? He's purple. Ryan is different. They are painted violet. Purple and violet are different colors. Therefore, they are not the same. Bother! Because if we do, we could be a colorful team. We may have purple sometime in the future. So Thomas began to ponder about bringing Toby into his team, and gain the purple color too. Thomas told the Top Hat about Toby. I see. Toby is old, and he doesn't have a color because he is made out of wood, giving him that brown appearance. His branch line doesn't have a controller anymore after it closed down before you had trouble with the police. If you're willing to make your team a rainbow by adding purple, ask anyone who is willing to join and game repainted. Yes, sir. But don't waste your time. You got trucks to be shunting. Thomas began to ask certain engines to join his steam team, but all the engines didn't want to be purple. Like Goran said, they all said, no thank you, thanks for the offer. After asking so many engines about his offer, Thomas was late for his work. Cinders and ashes, I mustn't be late. Thomas was in a frantic to get all the trucks sorted and ready, but he was going so frantic he didn't see where he was going. He was speeding up along the tracks. Toby was passing by. An intersection with no control signal laid ahead, where Toby and Thomas were coming in the oncoming direction. Toby's direction was blind by the wall on his right, which was cornered to the right, where Thomas was at. Toby had very brief time to even check where he was going. As he went into the crossing, Thomas shunting a couple trucks couldn't even stop too. And everything happened at once. Toby was tipped over onto the intersection. One of the trucks were derailed, and one of the paint drums spilled onto the track, and even on Toby. Toby's side was stained with purple paint. Thomas felt awful for what happened to Toby. He apologized rapidly and ran away. Thomas went straight to Tim's sheds, feeling rather awful. What's the matter? Don't ask! An hour or two later, the Topham Hat arrived. Thomas explained everything frantically, but the Topham Hat interrupted him. Thomas, I know you want to fill in the rainbow with that missing color, but that accident that you did wasn't being careful enough. Your trucks with paint stained Toby's wood on the side when you accidentally crashed into him. But I see you want Toby back on your team, so I decided to bring him here. Thomas turned around and saw Toby in his purple paint. Thomas, your accident made me change my mind. I like this color. I think it suits me a little bit better than just my bare wood. So after I was put back onto the tracks, I decided to get a new coat of paint. Does that mean? Yes, I'll be joining your steam team. The rainbow has now completed. Thomas gave a happy toot, and so did everyone else, including Gordon, who changed his mind shortly after. Maybe purple doesn't seem like a bad color after all for an engine like you, Toby. Toby greeted thanks, and the new steam team was united. One morning on the island of Slaughter, Thomas, James, and Percy were at the sheds, doing nothing. I'm bored, said Thomas. What are we supposed to do? How about try pulling your coaches Annie and Clarabelle? Or try shunting some freight cars. I'm not in the mood for doing those two things right now. puffed Thomas. Just then, Caroline arrived. She was carrying Sir Tom Hat. Hello, you, says Sir Tom Hat. I came to see how you guys are doing. Yeah, we're doing nothing much at the moment. Thomas, you will have to pull Annie and Club out for today. And you will also be carrying Caroline with you too, because she is going to visit the island this summer again. Yes, sir, replied Thomas, as he went on the turntable to fetch his coaches. Once Thomas was already buttoned up to his coaches, Caroline was there.
Oh, you must be Thomas the Tank Engine. Sir Tom had told me about you.
Of course I am Thomas the Tank Engine. Hey, why don't we say we go for a race?
I can't. It's because my radio is broken down.
Don't be so daft about your radiator. You can still go on without it. But before Caroline could say anything else, Thomas was already off.
Guess I'll start then.
Soon Thomas and Caroline were briefly racing. Come along, puffed Thomas,
I'm hot,
cried Caroline. Please slow down, they cried. Before anyone else could respond, Caroline had stopped. A conductor forced on the brakes, and then the train had stopped. Why did I stop? Asked Thomas.
You have not been paying attention to Caroline. She was breaking down, and you need to help her now. She only goes so fast.
Oliver's well and ends well, puffed Thomas, and he started to back up. And he stopped where Caroline had stopped. I'm sorry that I didn't listen to you.
And I'm sorry I can't keep up with the race.
Well, instead of racing, I'll have to follow your speed. And so, they started up again, and started to go at the same speed. Back at the sheds, Thomas told Percy about his day. I was racing with Caroline, and then she broke down, so I stopped and came back to help her, and I went on the same speed as her. It just goes to show that if you can't keep up with someone, then you should slow down and keep up with them instead. And that's why you should always stick with them. When Thomas got back to Farquhar's sheds, he saw that Nia was in Farquhar's sheds. No way! Why is Nia in the shed?
Hi, Thomas. The reason why I came to Farquhar's sheds is because I was getting tired of sleeping at Timoth, so I decided to move here instead.
You gotta like her. She's been really busy in Africa. Okay, so where should I be sleeping at? Well, during the nighttime, Percy does his mealtime run, and he can sleep in his berth at Farquhar's sheds, while he'll sleep outside Timoth. Alright. That night, Percy decided to do his mealtime run, as Thomas took over his berth. Thomas decided to be nice for a moment. So Nia, how was your adventures in Africa?
It was great, Thomas. I love to know how life hacks work in Africa, like using a funnel out of leaves.
Isn't that natural, Thomas? I'd rather not say any more about that. Meanwhile, I got to get to sleep. Night, Toby. Night, Nia.
The next morning, Toby had gone out to pick up Henrietta and take her out. And so did Thomas to go out and fetch Annie and Florida. When Thomas came back to Farquhar, he was surprised to see was that not Nia, but Ashima were at Farquhar sheds. Well, thank you, Nia, but where's Toby and Percy going to sleep at? We could never let Percy or Toby sleep next to Nia, because there's only one berth left. Thomas did not say anything else. First, Toby came back. Hello, Thomas. What's Ashima doing here? It was part of Nia's plan to let me sleep at Tim's sheds. Okay, that's alright. I'll go sleep at Farquhar Quarry with Mavis. Until then, Toby spent that entire afternoon and overnight sleeping at Farquhar with Mavis. Thomas was enjoying a girls' night out with Nia and Shima that he didn't realize that Percy was coming up. What is Ashima and Nia doing at Farquhar sheds? It was Nia's plan, said Thomas. Nia let Ashima sleep at Farquhar sheds from Timoth so that way I can sleep at Timoth's sheds. So if you're hanging out with two females, then you're not my friend anymore. If you're gonna do that, I'm running away. Percy, wait! What, Thomas? You can sleep here with Nia and Ashima. You know, Thomas? I'm gonna go ahead and do that. So Thomas backed out of the sheds just to let Percy sleep in the berth. Hey, ladies. Thomas came back to Tivma's sheds when Goran asked Thomas a question. Thomas, why aren't you sleeping at your branch line shed? Because it was Nia's plan and Ashima's too. So that way they can sleep at Farquhar sheds. If you want, Thomas, I can go and bring your branch line for you. No thank you, Edward. I'm gonna be okay. Besides, Percy's having a girls' night out.
Here comes Thomas the Tank Engine. Thomas and his friends work hard every day. Thomas does not want to work today. It is his birthday. He wants a party with loads of presents just like those who get on Christmas. But the top hat says, Henry is busy, Gordon is busy, James is busy. You must work today, Thomas. Yes, sir, said Thomas. So off Thomas goes to his branch line. Back and forth, back and forth. He carries people, animals, wood, and dairy. He worked so hard that his axles ached. Thomas sees his friends near the engine shed. No one says, Happy birthday. No one says a word about presents, balloons, or silly hats. Those engines did not look so busy to me, thought Thomas. At the end of the day, Thomas heads home. Oh, bother, groaned Thomas. There was a cow blocking the way. Move, says Thomas. No, 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 says Thomas. Not moo, move! At last, the cow finally moves. Thomas is late, and Thomas is tired. Some birthday. At last, Thomas arrives at Tisma's sheds. The top hat was waiting for him. Thomas, please go inside the shed. There is a surprise waiting for you. The top hat opens the doors to the dark shed. Thomas chugs inside slowly, and the lights come on. Surprise! Say all Thomas's friends. We were busy, says Henry. We were busy making a party just for you, says James. It was a wonderful party, and Thomas had lots and lots of presents. Happy birthday, Thomas. One afternoon, Toby was slowly reversing into the open shed. Toby, Grant going, what have you been taking? Glad you asked, Gordon. I've been taking Farmer McColl's cattle to market, Toby answered. He was not aware of his surroundings. Gordon meant you're smoking, James corrected. Don't be silly, James. We all smoke. That's what makes us move. Everyone began to cough. Get outside! Henry coughed. You're making us suffocate! Now, Toby noticed. Oh dear, I'm sorry. I don't mind sleeping outside. Hope you'll feel better. Thomas had seen the whole scenario without saying a single word, until he broke the silence. Do you think Toby's okay? He asked. I believe it's time that Toby should retire, Gordon mumbled. He's starting to have problems like Henry had before. Do I think he needs Henry's special coal? Thomas, Henry explained, the special coal that I had won't cut it. Coal is dirty, and from what I've seen, his system is aging. There are no other tram engines like Toby anymore, as they've all been scrapped. His firebox may no longer burn the coal properly, and would enter the smoke box. And, with or without a spark arrestor, the bad smoke occurs. Or worse, spark and catch fire. Thomas was speechless. He began to think about how to save one of his best friends throughout the night. The next day, Thomas passed through Henry's forest. He was delivering Percy's mail because Percy was punished for his actions. Thomas passed Toby, going through the forest. Toby was still releasing bad smoke, and then... Cinders and ashes, thought Thomas. If it gets worse, he'll set the forest on fire. Toby, what are you doing on the main line? He asked. I'm off to visit Percy. Figured he needs some company, Toby said. Little did he know that the sparks from Toby landed on the grass. At the Eastern Big Station, Thomas dropped off the last of the daytime mail. That's the last of it, said Thomas to the coaches. I'll pick up more mail tomorrow night. Also, he continued, did any of you two know about Toby puffing badly? We don't really know about Toby that much, they said. Thomas felt exhausted. He knew he had to figure out how to fix Toby's problem. When Thomas was heading for the journey back, the sky suddenly turned dark. What's happened to the sky? He asked. Then, he soon found the answer. Henry's forest was on fire! Trees, bushes, and grass were burning furiously. Call the fire department, Thomas demanded to the nearest signalman. I've already done it. I've also shut down the railway lines through here until it's safe, shouted the signalman to Thomas. It was bad to breathe here, so the signaler evacuated the signal house and jumped into Thomas's bunker. Once the fire was put out, the forest burned to shambles. Thomas was upset. All he could see was nothing but bare bones. No wildlife, no vegetation, no ambience. It was all empty with only the wind blowing. Henry's going to be beyond depressed when he hears this, his driver whimpered. Later, Thomas came back towards the sheds feeling unhappy. He was afraid to answer why because Henry was present and knowing exactly what Henry would feel. When Thomas had enough courage to answer, he still struggled. Henry, your forest... Come on, Thomas, out with it. Is gone. And Thomas was right. My forest, the place I usually comfort myself? No, it can't be gone. I'm sorry about what that forest meant to you. It was all burned in a fire. Now I have no place to go, moaned Henry. All the engines looked at both Henry and Thomas, sharing the same emotion. Sir Topham Hatt began to take notice. I'm deeply sorry about what happened to your forest, Henry. Unfortunately, the railway cannot afford to purchase new trees to replant them in the same area. Now, that made Henry feel worse than last night. Please, sir, Thomas demanded, you must help plant new trees. If the forest remains nothing, Henry will be put out of service indefinitely. Perhaps, maybe my driver could help? I'm unsure about that, he answered. I doubt that will happen. If that's the case, then I'll relocate Henry elsewhere until further notice. Now, Thomas had two issues going on. First Toby, and now Henry. Whatever's next? Rumors about the railway shutting down? Thomas struggled to figure out and retain his sanity. He overthought about them so much, he even got himself a headache. Take a break if you need to, Thomas, recommended his driver. Please, driver, could you help with the railway to replant Henry's forest? Thomas said, almost bursting into tears. And he explained everything just as before. Tell you what, his driver had an idea. We'll set up a fundraiser. When we put up posters, people can help fund the railway to plant new trees. Once the goal is reached, Henry will be able to collect the new trees from the docks. Thomas felt a lot better, although he had to speak to Sir Topham Hatt for approval. And he did. With the fundraiser in place, people began to donate money in need of Henry. It took a long time for their goal to reach. As it did, the railway brought over a gargantuan shipment of tree saplings. However, he and his driver ran into another problem. What would happen to the remaining wood from the aftermath? The wood looks pretty burnt, so I think hang on, driver, I'm thinking. With much consideration, Thomas had finally solved the problem. Driver, we can use all this leftover wood for Toby, Thomas answered, remembering what Henry had said. Since coal is dirty and pollutive, wood is a renewable source of energy. That way, Toby can breathe properly and be less pollutive. However, unlike us tank engines, he can't travel very far, so he'll be strictly on mine and his branch lines. That's a brilliant idea, agreed his driver. A few days later, Thomas talked to Henry. Henry was mourning over the loss of his forest. Hello, Henry. There's a surprise waiting for you. Sir Topham Hatt wants you to collect it right away. For me? Asked Henry. Definitely. We've been anticipating it. Henry was thrilled to see a ginormous line of flatbeds loaded with tree saplings. Cranky the Crane was also excited. "Look at those baby trees," he said. "In a year, they'll grow up so fast." "And they'll remain stuck just like you," Henry teased. Cranky felt embarrassed afterwards. Henry puffed away with all the trees needed to be planted. "Good luck, Henry," cheered Salty as Henry steamed by. During the process of the trees planted, Thomas took away the old stumps and wood for Toby. In no time, with the wood burning inside the firebox, Toby felt a lot better. "Thank you, Thomas," smiled Toby. "I didn't know I had problems like Henry." "I hope this makes you feel better," Thomas replied. Now Thomas felt more happy than he'd solved the long-term problems with Toby and Henry. Henry, meanwhile, with much anticipation, enjoyed the peace of his forest once again. "Thank you for everything," Henry whispered to the nature around. His forest is something he and the others will never forget.
Thank you for being a friend. Travel down the road and back again. Your heart is true, you're a pal and a confidant. I'll tell you that I'm not ashamed to say. I hope it always will stay this way. My hat is off. Won't you stand up and take a bow? And if you threw a party, invited everyone you knew, you would see the biggest gift would be from me, and the card attached would say, "Thank you for being a friend. Thank you for being a friend. Thank you for being a friend. Thank you for being a friend." If you come off the track, then I'll be there to pull you back. Whatever you need, any time of the day or night. And when we all get older, with rusty joints and pains, that's great. Have no fear, even though it's hard to hear. I will stand real close and say, "Thank you for being a friend. Thank 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 you for being a friend. I wanna thank you. Thank you for being a friend. Thank you for being a friend. I wanna thank you. Thank you for being a friend. And when it's time for you to go into the night and morning glow, you'll hear me call from round the bend. I'll see you soon Thank you for being a friend.